So what does a typical owner at Open and Affordable make? And you're going to see a lot of this type of talk online. And we're going to actually break down in future videos how exactly to make that. But this is really kind of more just a mathematical formula of how you arrive at the amount that you potentially can make. The average owner at Open and Affordable Dental makes between $250,000 and over $1 million per year. Multi-practice owners at Open and Affordable Dentists or Open and Affordable Dental and Braces probably made more than that last year on average. But again, I think that a lot of dentists don't understand the amount of work that it takes to get to that level. And really the formula, you can almost make that same amount as an associate, just working the same amount of hours that owners work. Because a usual owner dentist is going to usually have some clinical duties, and then they're going to have obviously a lot of admin duties and also some financial duties where they're, potentially going to banks, getting loans for their practices and things like that. The average dentist, when you leave dental school, usually owes between $400,000 to $500,000. That really affects your salary very quickly. So we're going to kind of go through the formula on how to calculate what you need to make and how much your total take home is going to be. If you look at a typical $400,000 loan, when you come out of dental school, let's say that you had to start paying it the day that you got out of dental school, you're going to have a monthly payment of $2,982.29. And that would be with the typical 20-year payoff terms and a 6.5% interest rate. Honestly, those rates are probably a little bit higher right now. And really, you're probably looking at $500,000 in student loans. So these numbers are a little bit conservative, okay? So what does marginal tax bracket or tax rate mean? It means if you make one additional dollar, how much is going to be paid to the federal government or to your state government in personal income taxes. So your student loans are going to have to be paid with money that is your after-tax money, okay? So we have our pre-tax money, which is what you earn before you pay taxes, and then you have your after-tax money, which is basically the money that you have left after you pay your taxes, okay? The loan or the formula to find out what your after-tax income is, your yearly income times 1 minus your federal tax bill, okay, times 1 minus your state tax rate, okay, minus your student loan bill, okay. So just for example, if you end up making $120,000 as a dentist, you're going to see this calculation. So 120,000 times 1 minus, let's say 32% for your federal income tax rate, times 1 minus 4.63% for your, let's say, Colorado income tax, minus $2,982.29. And then obviously we're taking that amount times a yearly amount, and that ends up with a salary and post-tax, post-student loan salary of $51,189.96. So if you take your final take home and then you divide it by your stated income, you're going to see if we take that $51,000 divided by our stated amount, which is $120,000, which you kind of think that you're making, really you're only taking home 43% of your stated income tax or your stated income. It's really humbling as a new dentist to find out that you are going to potentially, if you don't try to get your salary up, you're going to be making a lot less than even the hygienist that you work with. And a lot of times you're going to be making less than people who went out and got a computer science undergrad, or who went into even potentially plumbing right out of high school, or a lot of the trades. While they have been making a lot of money for the last 4 to 8 years, you could potentially, as a doctor, be making less than them. Just look at the comparison between an associate dentist making $120,000 and a hygienist, and this is very conservative, making $85,000 per year, okay? A hygienist, let's suppose that they have a $40,000 student loan bill total, okay? So at $85,000, they're in the 24% tax bracket, okay? So 85,000 times 1 minus 0.24 times 1 minus 0.0463, or this Colorado tax rate, minus their student loan bill is $298 a month, okay? So their yearly take home after tax, after student loan bill, is $58,000 per year versus you who are taking home $51,000 per year. And so that's $6,800 more as a hygienist than an associate doctor making $120,000, okay? So it's pretty humbling for an associate doctor to be working for wages that are a lot lower than people in your own office and a lot lower than potentially all of your friends who didn't sacrifice all of the time and effort and financial risk to go into dental school. So, the other thing too is think about hygiene versus being a doctor. With a hygienist, you don't have to deal with post-op complications. You don't have to deal with patients bleeding when you're doing a surgical extraction. You don't have to deal with a lot of the complaints that come back to you. You don't have to deal with as much of the pathology. You don't really have a lot of the removable prosthodontics that you have to deal with, general dentistry. You don't have to deal with all of the painful procedures that you have to put patients through. And so really, I always wished that dental schools would allow us to off-board dental school after year 2 and basically become a hygienist if we didn't want to do the final 2 years, because I think that they would solve both the hygiene problem as far as lack of hygienists in the United States, and it would give a lot of us the opportunity to make the money that we want without the higher stress that is associated with being a doctor. If you take a look at that, that is why you have to get yourself into a situation, unfortunately, where you can make the money that you need to in order to live the lifestyle that you really sacrificed at. I'm going to give you an example of a monthly production amount that we just completed at our Bennett office. And this really kind of shows you the amount of dentistry that potentially is out there, and that what we're working to provide all of our offices so that doctors can take home the amount of money that they hope to have taken home during their entire dental career.